practices criminal law in state and federal courts, where he does murders, rapes, drug cases, and it runs the gamut. Attorney Witkin, please tell us, when a client is accused of crime and comes to your office, do you ask him if he did it?
That's the one question which I absolutely don't ask. And the reason for it is the result. And the result is that if you do ask and the person says, yes, I did it, you can't put them on the witness stand, because invariably they'll lie about it, and you can't promote perjury. That's not part of our job. So if you don't ask, you don't know. You can assume, but you don't know for sure unless the fella or the woman tells you, and if they don't tell you, you're better off.
That's wise advice for all of us attorneys out there. If you don't know, then you put them on this. Attorney Witkin, now, what if a client just volunteers the information? What impact does that have in the case and in your defense? Well,
you're kind of stuck with it. If the man or woman comes into the office and volunteers the fact that, in fact, they've committed the crime, whatever it is, you're stuck in terms of putting the person on the stand, because invariably they're going to deny it. And again, you can't promote perjury. You've got to keep them off the stand to the best of your ability. If you can't keep him or her off the stand, then the only thing that you can do is put them on, have the person identify themselves, and then ask the one question, what happened? In other words, a generic question as opposed to specific questions that you would ordinarily do.
Mm-hmm. When you are doing these interviews with your client, are they typically alone with you? Is there someone else? Do you permit someone else in your office, or what effect does that have in your defense?
Well, part of the problem is that we don't want to create more evidence for the state against whoever the client is. Now, if you allow somebody into the office with that person and the government finds out about it, they'll subpoena that person. One of the big problems that we have is that husbands bring wives in, or gentlemen bring girlfriends in, women bring their boyfriends in, and without the marital disqualification. In other words, if you're married to somebody and you get subpoenaed in the case against them, you can disqualify yourself. But if you're not married, you can't disqualify yourself, and if you don't answer the questions, you go to jail for contempt.
That's correct. How do you handle when the mother definitely wants to be there with you at the meeting, or the ones?
I urge them not to be at the meeting, because I don't want us to create any more evidence than is already there. I tell the client, you can tell your mother later, you can tell your girlfriend later, but don't bring them into the room, because it doesn't help us any.
Okay. Attorney Witkin, and so out of all the cases that you represent, murder and rape, and so, which one is your favorite type of case that you like to represent?
Murder. And I enjoy trying murder cases. They're the most complex. To me, they're the most interesting. They have the most issues. And I'll be the fact it sounds ucky, to use a non-word, although it sounds ucky to people who aren't involved in the process. They're the ones that the judges pay the most attention to. What's going on. Everybody involved in the process pays a great deal of attention to what, in fact, is happening. Judges make sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and everything is done by the numbers.
However, Attorney Witkin, when you're representing people who are accused of murder, not all the time they're just victims of a misunderstanding. How do you feel about representing people who are actually guilty?
I prefer it, quite frankly. I know that runs against the grain, because so many people will say to me, have you ever represented anybody who did it? And I tell them, I hope to God every one of them did it, because I don't want to represent someone who's innocent. I have done that, and I've lost, and I've seen them go to Walpole. An innocent person go to Walpole, absolutely innocent, no question about it, went to Walpole. I can think of it now. I've had it more than once. And it's a terrible burden on me, on a lawyer, to know that you're representing somebody who didn't do it, who's absolutely not guilty, and stands the risk. I mean, in the death penalty cases of getting the death penalty. In our society, in Massachusetts, you can get life without parole for first-degree murder. And if you didn't do it, what a terrible burden on a lawyer who in his heart of hearts says, this guy didn't do it. That's why I say that, for the most part, I really do prefer representing people who did it one way or the other.
However, in the cases that you represent for murder, for instance, there may be one dead victim or 2 or 3 or 4 bodies who were found dead as a result of your client. How does that bother you, and how do you handle this?
I find it interesting. It doesn't bother me in the least. I'm sorry to say, it might sound ghoulish, but it doesn't bother me in the least. I've represented quadruple murder, defendant on a quadruple murder, and it was, for me, a great experience. It was a great deal of fun representing him. We had a 5-week, I can think back to it, we had a 5-week trial with all of the media there and being photographed. I'm quite an anonymous person where I live. I get up, get the paper, go out for coffee. Nobody knows me from Adam. But in those days, when that case was on television, every step I took, cops were coming over to me. Oh, Mr. Witkin, I didn't know you lived here. I said, I do. I live right here, and I try these cases.
And I just hope that you have time to go over on some of the cases that you actually have tried where there's these victims. But other kinds of victims that you may encounter in your defense are mothers, for instance. Have you represented people who have murdered their own mothers?
I have. I can think of, in fact, 2 cases where I represented fellas who were accused of murdering their mothers. One fellow was very drunk and stomped her to death with the boots that the fellows wear when they do construction work. He stomped her to death in the apartment and then promptly fell asleep. So when the police came in, he was sleeping and she was dead beside the bed. He represented him. And the other one, I frankly forget exactly what the facts were, but it was the same sort of thing without the ghoulishness of stomping on her. It's just another case.
Why do you think that these murders happen? Why do you think that your clients kill someone or are accused of it as a result of all the...
I think that drugs and alcohol have a lot to do with it. Now, today, if you get a younger lawyer on your show, the younger lawyer is going to say, I think it's drugs. I'm of the old school, and I believe that alcohol still plays an enormous part in these kinds of crimes. Be that as it may, it's the primal motivations of man and women, greed, hoping for something for nothing, wanting to make sure that you're the top dog or whatever else it is. I think that killing people is part and parcel of what a certain strata of society will ultimately do to preserve their position in their society.
And Attorney Witkin, what about, have you represented women who kill their husbands or men who kill their wives, their girlfriends, and how do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, I have no inhibitions about doing that. I've done both. Men who've killed their girlfriends and wives, women who've killed their boyfriends and their husbands. I had a woman who beat a man to death with a baseball bat. We tend to think of baseball bats as a man's weapon. This woman beat a guy to death with a baseball bat. It was another murder case, that's all. Just hope for the best.
But why did that woman do that? Like, how did you, was she crazy maybe, or mental issues?
No, I don't think she was crazy. I don't exactly remember what the thing was, but she was a little upset with him.
Just a little upset. Can you, when you work as hard, when you work with someone who actually did it, what's your experience on that? Like...
Well, in the 99 restaurant quadruple murder that occurred in Charlestown in 1995, I was counsel for the man who stood up in court and said, yes, he'd killed the 4 men. And I found it quite easy to do. He was a receptive client. His motivation was to take his son off the hook because his son had a gun and they had traced one of the bullets in one of the men in his head, in fact, to that gun. And the kid was charged with first-degree murder, and the father wanted to take the kid off the hook. So he got up and told everybody he killed everybody in the place. 4 dead, 1 wounded. As for me, it's how the case goes, rather than having inhibitions because of the ghoulishness of it.
And why do you work as hard for someone who did it equally for someone who didn't do it? Why? Like, I guess it begs the question, why do you work so hard when you know this person killed all these people and this ghoulishness?
Because the job is to, A, do the best you can as a professional. And as a professional, that's the only thing you can do is your best. Secondarily, it's important that everyone, irrespective of who they are or what they are, whether they speak English or don't speak English, whether they're white, black, yellow, whatever, everybody deserves the best defense possible. And I believe that, and I've been believing it for almost 50 years of doing this stuff. They deserve the best I can do. Now, one of the things that they don't get, which a lot of people seem to think they ought to get, is they don't get perfect trials. The courts rule time and time again, no one is entitled to a perfect trial, but you're entitled to a good one. You're entitled to a fair one. You're entitled to a fair judge. You're entitled to a lawyer who really puts out for you and tries the best he can. Well, that's what I try to do.
But Attorney Witkin, when you know that your client, when you see the evidence, you must get a sense that some people actually did murder somebody as opposed to other people who didn't.
Of course.
And when you win and you put them out on the street because of good lawyering and professionalism and zealousness, you know what transpired.
What I know is that if I am lucky enough to be able to do that with somebody who in my heart of hearts I know did it, I know that the Commonwealth or the United States has not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that this person did it. And that's what their job is. My job is to do my best to get them off. Their job is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. If they do not prove beyond a reasonable doubt, the person is entitled to an acquittal, and that's what I'm there for.
Oh, thank you. Now, if one of your clients, you get the sense that for whatever reason, despite your professionalism and zealousness, you feel that this person does not like you, how do you handle that client?
That's a very problematic area, because I have had the ones who come up to me and say, I want you as my lawyer, but I don't like you. All right. I don't care whether you like me or don't like me. What I care about is doing the best I can. What scares the living hell out of me is when I'm threatened. And I've had that happen. When they take disliking me to the point of threatening me, that's a whole different level.
But if they don't like you, Attorney Witkin, what do they? And they've hired, or you're appointed to them. It's different because there's a loss of maybe confidence, or do you feel that the client, you lose out something from the client?
I don't lose anything, but the client may lose out because the client is reticent about telling me everything because perhaps he doesn't like me or whatever else. When a client indicates to me that he doesn't like me, I suggest to him that he write a letter to the court and ask to have me discharged as the lawyer and get somebody else whom you do like. A lot of times, they'll tell me they don't like, a lot, there aren't that many times this occurs, but when it does occur, they'll say, oh no, I don't like you, but I want you as my lawyer. You're a good lawyer. So I'm stuck.
For all our viewers, today we are doing the segment in criminal law. And we have attorney Roger Witkin, who is a criminal defense attorney since 1963, specializing in state and federal courts, focusing on murder, rape, trial, drugs, and runs the gamut. My name is attorney Lucy Rivera, and you are watching Discovering the Law. Please look at this segment at www.discoveringthelaw.com. And back to you, attorney Witkin. You did say something about threats. So have you had a client actually threaten you? What kind of threat?
he called me from Block 10 at Walpole, which is where they put the good guys. And I mean that in jest, of course. It's the disciplinary unit. And he told me on the telephone that he was going to kill me. And he added to that he said, you better hope that I get a long sentence, because when I come out, I'm going to kill you. As it happened, he got a 25-year sentence without me. And by that time, I'll be close to 100, and I figure I won't be on this earth for him to bother. So that's good enough there. But I was upset, very upset by the threat itself, and I thought that with that, our relationship had ended. And as a result, I notified the court. I didn't say what he said. I didn't say the threat or anything else, but I did notify the court formally that I needed to withdraw, and that the things had arisen by and between himself and myself that necessitated the appointment of another lawyer. The judge's ruling I thought was kind of humorous. What he did was he said, I'm going to allow that motion that you withdraw, but you filed a motion to do something. I want you to write a memorandum on whatever the legal point was, and when you filed that, I'll let you out of the case. So I had to work for the guy, albeit the fact he threatened to kill me.
Attorney Witkin, on that, is that normal if you want to withdraw from a case, from a client who actually has threatened your safety and your well-being? Obviously, you handled it the way that was fit for you, but is that other attorneys that are less experienced, do they really have to write a memo? I mean, is that...
I don't know. I'd never had the experience before. I've had it the one time. I've had other experiences where they come close to threatening me, but don't. Most of the times when there's a change of counsel, it occurs because the client notifies the judge, notifies the court that they're entirely dissatisfied with what Mr. Witkin is doing. He's not doing this, that, and the other thing, and I want a new lawyer. And generally, I get hauled in front of the judge and, did you do this? Did you do that? Whatever. What should I do? They ask. And I tell them, get him a new lawyer whom he's satisfied with. Why have the problem of my continuing? And they do.
In your experience, no one has come true in their threats, I hope.
Well, I'm still here.
Attorney Witkin, now, this is, what television program do you think your life most resembles to? There are so many...
You mean what I do?
Yes, so many television shows out there that...
The problem is that the show that I and so very many other criminal defense lawyers love the most isn't on television anymore. It was for about 10 years. It was on PBS, and the name of it was Rumpole of the Bailey. And Rumpole was a lawyer in England, and the reason that the show was so successful in our minds was not only did it show real cases and stuff like that, and it was written by a lawyer, but it also went into his thought processes as he tried cases and as he dealt with his wife and as he dealt with clients. And it was exactly the same as what we do, particularly the part about the wife.
Or the husband, maybe.
Yes.
So, Attorney Witkin, you are you're definitely an academic in criminal law. You wrote, co-authored Volume 42 of the Massachusetts Practice of Criminal Law series for the criminal defense motions. And I understand that Volume 43 is going to be published.
No, it's the fourth edition of 42. It's in the process of being released right now.
Very nice. And now tell us about what's in the book. What is useful about this?
What's in the book it's a form book. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be thought to be anything but a form book, although it has commentary and law and all the rest of that stuff. But it has the kind of motions that most lawyers need to file or should at least review on whether or not they ought to file on most criminal cases, from murder down to a parking ticket. It has everything you need to do in terms of filing of motions, bills of particular, motion to suppress, affidavits, memoranda, and stuff like that.
I've been the recipient of the CD of your book today. I appreciate that. And I am curious to see, this book came about because there weren't any other books.
When I first started, I had to file motions, and I was looking for a form book because everybody likes to be able to cheat doing that stuff. Thinking all this stuff up yourself is tough. But if you could cheat and find it in a book, it would be so much easier. There was no book back in 1964, 65. So by 1967, I started putting together for myself the book, and it went on for a long while. In fact, I didn't get it published by West Publishing until 1992. The first edition came out.
Congratulations, Attorney Witkin, because all of us use that book, and everybody that I know who is somewhat responsible has your book in their library.
Yeah.
Attorney Witkin, it's so interesting when you call your attorneys into your clients in your office, and then they're there on your own, you're interviewing them. How do you go about the process when they, for example, for a murder case or a rape case, do you go over the facts? What do you talk to them about? What do you want them to tell you?
Well, again, bearing in mind that I don't ask them if they did it, assuming we're talking about a homicide case. And it's not in my office, it's generally in the jail. And the first thing I do is I want to find out about them, who they are, what they are, who their family is, what they did for a living, how far their schooling went. Were they drug abusers, alcohol abusers? Do they have family I can contact if I need some further information about them? That kind of stuff, at least with somebody charged with murder, because you don't, as I say, you don't want to get into, did you pull the trigger? Is that really you? You don't have that because the guy may want to take the witness stand, and you don't want to screw that up. By the same token, if you have a rape, and invariably when you're talking to the client, you've got all the personal information and the rest of it, they will tell you that he was seduced, or it was a consensual encounter, or it was this, that, and the other thing, and you're already involved with it because in a rape case, generally, not in all times, but generally a fellow will take the stand. And if he takes the witness stand, he better stick to what he told you, because that's how it is. Most cases, murder, the rest, I tell them, don't bother taking the stand, it's not going to help you. There are one or two kinds of cases in which I think that a criminal defendant has got to take the stand, and as a result, you've got to get the minutiae of what happened at the time of the crime alleged, and that is a drunk driving case. You have to know what's going on, irrespective whether you're going to try the case or not, because I think they really do have to take the stand and explain why they failed to count from 1 to 20 backwards, or didn't know the alphabet, or couldn't walk correctly, or whatever the problem is with those kind of tests, and why they smelled of alcohol, and so on. Those kinds of things, I think that the defendant is the only one who can put it forth as to why it's like that. The other cases, I don't think you need to.
Well, Attorney Witkin, there is a lot more to know about criminal law and about your work. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time. But I'd like to thank everybody for watching this program, and we're here for us to learn about criminal law. My name is Attorney Lucy Rivera, and I am the host of Discovering the Law. This program and all our other programs can be viewed at www.discoveringthelaw.net. And pleasure to have Attorney Roger Witkin with us today.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Attorney Witkin.